Hello once again and welcome to the Prince Magnum channel where hot rodding and romance do coexist. I'm your host Prince Magnum and welcome to another edition of Do-It-Yourself Budget Hot Rodding. The video footage that you're seeing is, believe it or not, from the Jackson, Missouri car show from July the 4th, 2018. Independence Day from 2018. Now, there was a wide selection of cars, and Project Spirit, as usual, was the only Maverick that was at this car show. We've only, for 2018, I've only seen one other Maverick at car shows where I live. So Project Spirit was, kind of one of a kind there, but there was a lot of one of a kinds at this car show. You're going to see, new, old, and alt points in between, and believe it or not, you're going to see a lot of vehicles from the 50s and 60s. Very well, believe it or not, though, I was actually surprised at the amount of 70s vehicles that were well represented. But by and large, there was a lot more vehicles from the 50s and 60s. And of course, there was quite a few newer show cars. Cars that like the Dodges that you're seeing there, and of course, even a few amazing tuner cars that were also there, Japanese tuners. By and large, though, again, mostly cars from the 50s and 60s, a few from the 70s, quite a few from the 80s and 90s, and all the way up to current date. You did see a few that were there was a few very unusual vehicles at this car show, but again, if you will, the usual suspects were there. All right. You might be noticing that there's a lot of fade in and fade outs. Well, when I started getting the camera rolling, a lot of the problem is people were like, "Oh, you're videoing," and it just became where I could not concentrate while I was working, trying to get you all video footage. So there was also a few vehicles that didn't make it into this video. For example, there was a very nice looking Ford Fairmont that I wanted to get a good shot of, but it just didn't happen that way, just because there just wasn't they weren't there long enough, and I had so many interruptions with people asking questions about the YouTube channel and everything, and I did pick up a few subscribers from that day, and there's quite a few people that have been waiting for me to finish this video, but time just has not allowed it. Right now, you're actually seeing video footage, believe it or not, of a Ford Pinto. This is the first car show I've ever been to where there was actually a Ford Pinto on display. Again, the 70s were pretty well represented. There was a Pinto, there was a four-door Nova, there was a Gran Torino, a 75 Gran Torino. There, of course, was Project Spirit. There was a late 70s Ford Fairmont. The 70s was very well represented. Of course, even a couple of 70s Corvettes. Which Corvettes car show, that's pretty commonplace. Which I was grateful to get footage of those amazing rides. And believe it or not, that Ford Pinto has an amazing supercharged four-cylinder and is actually set up for racing. I was blown away at how nice it looked. Of course, again, you're going to see a lot of footage of vehicles from the 50s, especially here on the Prince Magnum channel. We love our cars of the 1950s. They're amazing, right? They're just works of art. From the 50s, cars were just works of art, and here's a fine example of again those amazing fender skirts that I keep waiting for them to figure out a way to make fender skirts look good on modern cars, but they just haven't gotten to that point. So again, there was a lot of amazing rides out there, of course. This was one of my first times in many years being this close to a Grand National. However, later in the video, you're going to see a custom Buick Regal that I felt was just much nicer looking than even this Grand National. Again, a lot of amazing rides out there, and some of them, believe it or not, with inline sixes. There was a lot of people who were running inline sixes at this car show. including there was a guy who had a 60s Mustang that just had this amazing looking inline six. Again, a lot of just a lot of vehicles of all sizes and shapes. Now, this was also one of the first times in a long time that Project Spirit did not bring home a trophy. But I ended up coming out of this car show with, I guess you could say, something even better than a trophy. I'd been in contact with the car club that puts this show on every year, and for the record, we will be going back next year to Jackson for the 4th of July. We will definitely make sure that we take Project Spirit. That being said, when we went to this car show, I'd already been in contact for a long time with the car club that puts it on, and they said, we don't care what you bring, but you've got to bring that Maverick, because a daily driven Maverick, after all these years, we definitely want to see that ride. And they were really impressed with not only the fact that she's daily driven, and when I was giving them the walk around of Project Spirit, they were impressed with the fact that she's still on the road after all these years. She's still daily driven. And she looks as good as she does considering her age, and the fact that she's never had body work or anything like that. Still has the original paint. And they even had me fire her up. You would not believe the crowd that Project Spirit attracted when I hit that key. They could not believe the sound that inline six would still give even after all these years. But the other thing that impressed them was the fact that Project Spirit's story is still intact. And we've talked about Project Spirit's story here on the Prince Magnum channel and at great length. That being said, they just loved that she still had a story after all of these years. And in most cases, most of the cars that you're seeing in this video, the best story that you're going to be able to find with those cars is since the current owner has had that vehicle. Again, not to say that Project Spirit's any better or any less than any of these other vehicles, because again, there was a lot of amazing rides out at this show, and even right now as I'm doing this footage, amazing paint jobs and colors gave me a lot of ideas for Project Spirit as we get closer to doing even more to her. Again, Project Spirit is one of the few and the proud that, though, out of all the classics, if you will, that's still daily driven even after all these years. And even some of the newer ones were just weekend warriors. It's one of those things that, unfortunately, as time has marched on, some of these cars just don't get to do what they used to do, and that's go out and have a great time. So this was one amazing trip that I made with Princess Faye. We had a great time that day, and at this point, I'm going to do what I really should do and that's just kind of shut up and let some music play, and I'll jump back in here in a little bit, and we'll talk a little bit more about these amazing rides, like this beautiful looking Pontiac Trans Am that was at that show. We'll talk more and more about some of these amazing rides as the video progresses. So just sit back and enjoy some music. All right, it should be noted without any question in anybody's mind that Princess Faye is actually a fan of Volkswagen. Uh, it's the only foreign company that she really gravitates towards, and of course, mainly because of the Volkswagen Beetle. And I don't know anybody who can say anything bad about the Volkswagen Beetle. It went on for many years. A very popular car all around the world. But what I was really surprised to see was this Volkswagen pickup. I've never seen anything like it. It almost looks like a van that's been, had, part of it hacked off, and then it's just been converted over into a pickup truck. The owners of this truck, they were very, very proud of this. Again, you don't see something like this very often, but it was definitely quite the conversation piece. Just one of those oddities that you sometimes turn up at a car show. As promised, I talked about, the Grand National earlier in the video. Well, here's that Buick Regal that was not made to look like a Grand National. Folks, this is a sharp looking ride. I had something similar like this some years ago. Kind of wish I still had something like this today. But, seeing a project like this right next to his dad, this is actually two vehicles that are done by a father and son. Gorgeous looking rides, and I was really glad to just see a basic Buick Regal that's been built up. To go along with this, you've seen quite a few 57 Chevys, and sitting right next to this 57 Chevy, believe it or not, is a 58 Chevy Impala. Now, for those who do not know, the 58 Chevy Impala was the car that Ron Howard drove in the classic movie American Graffiti. And of course, the 57 Chevy is one of my all-time favorite cars, right up there next to the 57 Oldsmobile. Again, cars of the 1950s, you can't say anything bad about them. Just beautiful works of art. Of course, the day came to a close. Princess Faye and I loaded up after the award ceremony. And it took us a long while to even be able to get out of there because, let's face facts, there was a lot of cars there. But once we hit the road, we just had a great time on the way home. It was a wonderful day through and through, and a lot of amazing stories to come out of the Jackson, Missouri Car Show. Of course, we definitely want to go back again next year, and we want to thank the Car Club down there for putting on the show. When having the Prince Magnum channel there that day, it was a wonderful time, wonderful time. I really wish all of you could have been there. Alrighty, that brings us to the close of all of this. Again, check us out on Patreon if you have anything to donate. It's always appreciated. Be sure to follow me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter, and as usual, get out there and work on a project. Don't care what it is, just do something with yourself. If you have a sweetheart, sweep them off their feet. And as always, for all of you out there, if no one out there has told any of you that they love you today, Prince Magnum does. God bless you, and have a happy 24. Thank you.
You done messed up, Aaron. Now take your ass on down to Oshag Hennessy's office right now and tell him exactly what you did. Get out of my goddamn classroom before I break my foot off in your ass. Insubordinate and churlish.